You never forget your first crush. The butterflies you feel, the twist of emotions, and add to that the young age and hormones, and it's all so surreal and new and fascinating. It's an experience as well as a lesson for a lot of people out there. But what if your first love becomes a very dark and deadly experience? 22-year-old Joshua Hilberling met 18-year-old Amber Fields, and within months, they settled into their newly married life. They were each other's first real love. Everything was perfect, romantic, and everything they hoped it would be. Things seemed fine on the surface until they weren't. When Joshua's body was found on the ground outside the apartment that he shared with his pregnant wife Amber, everyone was horrified. But this is a case where nothing is as it seems. The tragic and very harrowing case of Joshua Hilberling is a clear example that everything, even love, has exceptions. Welcome to True Crime Stories. I'm your host, Ty Knott, and I post new true crime documentaries every single week. So if you like what you see, be sure to subscribe. It's totally free and just lets you know when I post new videos. Joshua Blaine Hilberling was born on May 30th, 1988, to parents Patrick and Jean Hilberling in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Joshua had 5 more siblings, 3 brothers, Zach, Scott, and David, and 2 sisters, Carrie and Nikki. The Hilberling family was very large, but also very close. Joshua, growing up, was defined as a very athletic and sporty kid. He loved the outdoors and was always on the move. He attended Victory Christian High School in Tulsa, where he played football, and he graduated from high school in 2007. And right after that, he enlisted in the Air Force. It's safe to say Joshua wasted no time getting himself into gear and was ready to dedicate himself to a very noble cause. And at a height of 6'5" and weighing 220 pounds, Joshua was a force to be reckoned with when he finally got accepted into the Air Force. Even though Joshua was built like a tank, Joshua was a very kind and gentle person. He was a family-oriented guy through and through, and he loved kids. According to everyone who knew him, Joshua's smile was one of his best features. Even from pictures, you can see that the happiness in his smile comes from a very genuine place. It was this exact smile that likely attracted 18-year-old Amber Fields. Amber was a touch younger than Joshua, but she was a very confident and independent person. She did incredibly well growing up and played soccer and volleyball in school, but somehow still managed to find time to compete in track and dance as well. But she managed to keep all this up and still get incredible grades, which is beyond me, but it's safe to say Amber wasn't your typical teenager. Sadly, Amber's parents went their separate ways early on in her life, and her mom went on and married a man named Brian Whitlock in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who was a doctor. Amber had just graduated from high school in 2010 when she crossed paths with Joshua at a Halloween party. Even though they didn't immediately click right away, they kept in touch, and a few weeks later they went on their first date. According to Amber, she and Joshua completed each other, and both had traits in them that the other person didn't have. So together, they were the whole package. According to Amber, Joshua was, quote, the love of her life. This is why, after just a few short months of dating, the two decided to get married. I mean, after all, if you know, so why wait? But Joshua was in the Air Force, so the two had to move frequently. So right after their marriage, Amber and Joshua moved to Fairbanks, Alaska. And this is where they got struck with some delightfully unexpected news. Amber was pregnant, and the couple was over the moon about it. Everything was moving very fast, though, from dating to marriage and now a baby on the way all within a year. But both Joshua and Amber were more than excited to start this new chapter of their lives. Following Amber's pregnancy announcement, the couple decided to move back to Tulsa, where they were living at University Club Towers apartments on the 25th floor. The couple settled down hoping for an uneventful pregnancy, but little did they know that their newly beloved home was about to become a crime scene. June 7th of 2011 was the fateful day when everything came crashing down, and quite literally. In the afternoon, 911 operators received a disturbing call. A man stated that he heard the sound of glass breaking and that someone fell out of the window of the 25th floor of the University Club Towers apartments just seconds later. Almost immediately, the investigators and emergency services were dispatched to the scene. When the police arrived at the place where this person made impact, the 8th floor of the parking garage of the apartment complex to be exact, their eyes met a gruesome scene that most people had only ever seen in movies. A man was lying on the ground, obviously no longer alive, and a heavily pregnant woman was beside him, hysterically begging the paramedics to fix him. The man was almost instantly identified as 23-year-old Joshua Hilberling, and the 8-month pregnant woman was his wife, 19-year-old Amber. Now, considering that Joshua had just fallen 17 floors, more than 170 feet, it's safe to say there was no fixing him. Joshua was gone. It was a horrific sight for the investigators and emergency services, but everyone had questions. How did this happen? Did Joshua trip? Did he tragically end his life? And if so, why did he do it? But the most daunting question of all, was he pushed? Well, the detectives had to find the answers, and luckily they didn't have to look too hard because Amber, she told investigators exactly what happened. She said, quote, "He fell out of the window when I pushed him." But everything wasn't as it seemed. See, Amber had told the police that she had pushed Joshua in self-defense after the couple had been fighting that day. And according to Amber, things had gotten physical to the point where Amber, in a desperate attempt to protect herself and her baby, pushed Joshua backwards after he apparently grabbed her by the shoulders quite hard. The push caused him to stumble on a fallen candle that was on the ground, and he tripped out of the window, falling to his end. The story was, pretty cut and dry. After this revelation, Amber, accompanied by her grandmother, was immediately taken to the police station for questioning. And a bunch of police officers went up to the couple's apartment to check the place out and collect any evidence. But this strange and twisted story, this is only just the beginning. On the way to the police station, Officer Dawn Holloway overheard Amber telling her grandmother that she pushed Joshua, causing him to fall out of the window, which was a confession right then and there regardless of why she did it. At the police station, both women were taken into an interrogation room, which was fitted with recording devices, and from the looks of it, Amber looked very unstable and distraught. She looked like she was crying, but weirdly enough, there were no tears. She went from making a crying face to being dead serious within just seconds, and it's just unsettling to watch her interrogation tape. The whole video is just downright strange. But also, the conversation that she had with her grandmother while the two were in the room was just bizarre. Amber repeatedly claimed that she pushed Joshua, and her grandmother kept telling her not to say that, and persuaded her to get an attorney. To this, Amber asked the weirdest thing. She said, "Doesn't that make me guilty?" At times, it would dawn on Amber that she may go to jail, and that her husband was gone, and her thoughts turned very dark, and she just kept on repeating, "I just want to be with Josh. I don't deserve to live." Amber also went on to say something that thickened the plot of the couple's seemingly happy and lovable marriage. See, Joshua and Amber had met with a marriage counselor and even went to the investigators at one point, and Amber remembered the detectives telling the couple that if they stayed together, then Amber was likely to end Joshua's life. And if that doesn't cause alarm bells to go off in your mind, then I don't know what will. But we'll get to all of that in just a second. First, remember the investigators that searched the apartment after Joshua fell? Well, when they entered the space, everything seemed normal. There weren't any signs of a struggle or anything looking like a fight had taken place. Everything was in order. There were packed bags by the front door, but there was no mess. The only place that was messy was the area around the window. There's broken glass all over the floor, but the huge candlesticks by the window, the ones that Amber said Joshua had tripped over, were undisturbed and perfectly in place. Upon further investigation, police also found a piece of paper lying around, and it was a protective order. And I think you might know where this is going, but just wait, because if you think the order was filed by Amber against Joshua, you're in for a surprise. Even to the police, this looked like a classic case of domestic violence, but when they further examined the paper, it was safe to say investigators were shocked. The order was actually filed by Joshua against Amber, just 2 weeks prior, but it was never followed up on. The scene left the detectives even more confused because Amber's story wasn't adding up, and now there was evidence that Joshua was scared for his life and filed a protective order against his wife, and not the other way around. So they decided to ask around and see if people knew or heard of anything unusual. Luckily, a lot of people came forward, and one of them was a repairman who'd visited Joshua and Amber's apartment on the day of Joshua's tragic and horrific passing. See, a man named Armando Rosales was called to fix a broken window in the bedroom of Josh and Amber's apartment. The couple had been arguing, and it led to a TV being smashed against the window, causing it to break. Armando recalled seeing Amber very angry, and he also saw Joshua packing his bags and leaving them by the front door, looking like he was about to leave Amber. This explained the bags that the investigators found. Armando remembered the couple arguing a lot, so he stepped out into the hallway and waited for his coworker to get a few more items from the parking garage. And that was when both Armando and a couple of other neighbors heard a lot of screaming and fighting. A woman's voice, likely Amber's, was heard repeatedly shouting "no" before they heard running, a crashing sound, and then a piercing scream. Tragically, the scream was Joshua falling. Armando's coworker at the parking garage even witnessed the horrific fall. What was even more devastating was that the coworker said that Joshua sounded petrified as he was falling. He certainly didn't jump of his own free will, as was originally an option for investigators. The worker also saw Amber approach the window a few seconds later. Another witness who was right across the street saw Joshua fall from the window face first. This is important to note because it seemed that Joshua had his back turned to Amber when she pushed him. So this implies that Joshua was not expecting it, and he was completely unaware of Amber's actions. This detail leads to a lot of questions. Were Joshua and Amber really fighting? And was his fall a tragic freak accident? Or was she the threat all along and was looking for the right opportunity to attack Joshua when he least expected it? Well, right after Joshua's terrifying and fatal fall, Armando was met by a distressed Amber in the hallway, and she asked him to come with her down to the parking garage. Armando was genuinely scared of Amber at that point, and even testified to all of that in court later on. But he did go with Amber to the lobby and called the police to notify them of what had happened. When the investigators uncovered more and more details, they also broke the news of Joshua's passing to his family, who were not equipped to handle such an incredible tragedy. Just hours before, Joshua was over the moon. Life was going well, he had a new baby on the way, but now everything was different. Joshua's family couldn't imagine that their son could lose his life in such a terrible way. But with this interaction with the Hilberling family, the detectives got to know about more distasteful things in Joshua and Amber's anything but perfect relationship and marriage. See, Joshua's brother Zach told the investigators that he got a very weird feeling about Amber from the first time Joshua introduced her to the family. According to Zach, Amber was controlling, difficult, and manipulative. Zach even advised Joshua to end the relationship with Amber, but Joshua refused and chalked up her weird behavior as emotional baggage from back home, whatever that meant. See, Joshua wanted Amber to have a better life. She'd come from a broken family, and things were not ideal for her. Even though she'd gotten amazing grades in school and done so well in her extracurricular activities, but here's some information most people don't know. Straight A's can be a trauma response just as much as bad grades. In fact, all of those extracurricular activities that Amber was taking part in, well, there's a good chance they were just a form of escapism, a way for Amber to get out of her own head and get out of her difficult situation at home. All Joshua wanted was to be with Amber and finally see her happy and carefree. But sadly, that didn't happen. Not long after, Joshua was on the receiving end of Amber's manipulation and violent behavior. Rather than escaping her situation at home, Amber had allowed it to become part of her, and it had now followed her into her new relationship. Joshua confided in his parents about Amber assaulting him multiple times, pushing him down the stairs and throwing objects at him, including a lamp that hit his head, for which he needed 20 stitches for that one. But Joshua also found out that Amber had started to abuse substances, which only added fuel to the fire, making Amber more vicious and violent towards him. This eventually led Joshua to contact Domestic Violence Intervention Services for help. They were referred to on-base counseling, considering Joshua was in the Air Force, but for whatever reason, they didn't attend any sessions. According to Joshua's family, the only reason why he stayed with Amber for so long was because she was pregnant, and he wanted to be a part of their baby's life, which is just heartbreaking. Joshua was conflicted. He wanted to leave Amber, but he only stayed for his baby. That makes it all the more difficult to realize that Joshua never did get to see his child, even after sticking around for so long. But June 7th was the day when Joshua had enough, and he was ready to leave. So could that be the reason why Amber, in a fit of rage, pushed him out the window? Well, on the flip side, Amber's family had a completely different version of events. According to Amber's mom, Rhonda, Joshua was the aggressive one in the relationship. She claimed that Joshua was the one who had issues with substance abuse, and this led to him being discharged from the Air Force. Now, this is all an allegation from Amber's family and has not been proven. Even Amber went on to accuse Joshua of being under the influence on that fateful day, but his toxicology results came out and there was no trace of anything illegal in his system. So Amber was lying, and it's possible she lied to her family as well, hence the unfounded allegations. One of Amber's friends, Courtney Dye, defined Amber and Joshua's relationship as, quote, dangerous and toxic, but added that at the end of the day, it was love. But guys, I'm just gonna call it like it is. That statement is one of the most absurd things I've ever heard, and I think we're all a little dumber for having listened to it. But anyway, as far as the violence allegations go, the Hilberling family has stated time and time again that Joshua was not an abusive person. Joshua's parents said, quote, we taught Joshua to never hit a woman, but what we didn't think to teach him was to get away. Both Joshua's and Amber's families were fighting for their respective children, but it was up to the detectives to figure out who was wrong and who was right, and everything was about to be put out on the table for the world to see. After combing through all of the evidence, 19-year-old Amber was arrested on the first-degree murder charge of her husband, Joshua Hilberling. She was eventually let out on bail under the conditions of wearing an ankle monitor at all times, having a curfew, not staying anywhere else but her mom or grandma's house, and having a routine breathalyzer and urine test done. All the while, the preparations for the trial were underway. On August 6th of 2011, Amber finally gave birth to a healthy baby boy that she named Levi Carter. During her time out on bail, Amber was even allowed to attend university, and she studied at Rose State College. But Amber's freedom was short-lived, and she was rearrested for violating her pretrial freedom conditions. See, Amber did not follow the rules of her bail and would often stay out late, change her location and curfew time, and possibly cause the ankle monitor battery to die. If that wasn't enough, there were even traces of illegal substances in her system on 2 different occasions. This woman simply could not have cared less. Even though Amber maintained her innocence and stressed over and over that she pushed Joshua in self-defense, her fellow inmates after her second arrest had a different story to tell. According to 2 inmates in the same cell as Amber, she continuously mocked Joshua, called him names, and laughed about killing her husband like it was a joke. Amber was also offered 2 different plea deals, but she refused and stuck to her self-defense statement, thinking that she would get out of this unscathed. So with that, Amber's trial began, and the prosecution reduced the charge from first-degree to second-degree murder, and they were looking at a sentence of anywhere from 15 years to life in prison. According to the prosecution, Amber was a controlling, manipulative, and violent woman, and when Joshua had finally had enough of her toxic behavior and was about to leave her, that was the last straw for her, and she wanted to get back at him twice as hard, causing Amber to push Joshua towards the window when his back was turned. Due to Joshua being such a large guy, the impact of the fall broke the glass, and tragically, Joshua could not be saved after the horrific fall. The prosecution also presented witnesses to support their claims, including the repairman Armando, his co-worker, and other people that saw Joshua fall. The defense, on the other hand, stuck to the whole self-defense ruse, and they even went as far as blaming the apartment complex for their negligence in window maintenance and integrity. According to the defense, the building was ancient and the windows were not strong. The caulking was deteriorated and the glass panes were very thin and old. The prosecution rebuffed this statement and said that the condition of the window would not have caused it to break. Rather, the impact of Joshua's body did when he was pushed by Amber. Eventually, the jury deliberated for just 3 hours, and on March 18th of 2013, almost 2 years after Joshua's tragic passing, Amber was found guilty of second-degree murder. The sentencing was held on April 23rd, 2013, and Amber was given 25 years in prison. She had to pay not only a $10,000 fine, but also the funeral expenses for her late husband. Following the sentencing, Amber appealed the decision on the grounds of poor representation, but the Oklahoma Court of Appeals upheld the conviction in 2014. and she now had to serve her sentence at the Mabel Bassett Correctional Center, a medium-security women's prison in McLeod, Oklahoma. Even after her sentencing, Amber maintained her innocence, and she did several interviews, including one with BBC, Dr. Phil, and even a local Tulsa TV station. In the interview with Dr. Phil, Amber went on to say, quote, "I loved Joshua very much. I stayed with him for as long as I could. They painted me as a monster. It was breaking my heart just to have him leave. So to intend to kill somebody that you love that much couldn't be plausible." But not long after her sentencing, Amber found love in prison again, and it was with a woman named Patricia. It's crazy to see Amber calling Joshua the love of her life. Meanwhile, she was hooking up with a fellow inmate. Fast forward to October 23rd of 2016. Amber wrote a letter addressed to Tulsa's Channel 8 executive producer, Amy Sullivan, stating her interest in appearing for an interview despite, quote, her honest reservations. From the looks of it, the letter seemed pretty normal, and nothing was out of the ordinary. But it was never sent, and just a day later, on October 24th, prison guards found Amber Hilberling unresponsive in her cell at 5:33 p.m. She was 25 years old at the time of her death, and it was clear to the medical examiner that she had taken her own life. Amber's family firmly believes that her passing was malicious and that someone else was behind it, as the letter that was written by her didn't indicate anything towards ending her own life. But the thing is, I can think of dozens of people who gave no indication of wanting to end their life, but they did. As for Joshua's family, quite opposite to Amber, they just want to stay out of all this and just do their best to move on. They've been through so much, and now with Amber's passing, the person who tainted their lives with trauma, with sadness, and with grief, the last hope to get justice for their son has dwindled. It's just heartbreaking to see Joshua's family trying to cope with this monumental and tragic loss. Since this case was so high profile, everyone knew about it, and the way Amber was doing interviews left, right, and center, I can't help but feel like it may have been a publicity thing. The fact that she was personally reaching out to these news stations for interviews rather than the other way around, it just feels gross. Joshua's family has been through enough, and I think it's fair that they just want to mourn in peace, away from all the drama and media attention, so that they can remember and look back on the happy memories of Joshua. Zach Hilberling, following in his late brother's footsteps, also joined the United States Air Force and has served in Afghanistan. There's not a day that goes by when the Hilberling family doesn't miss Joshua. Joshua's mom says that she just wants to remember her son with the good memories, and not by the way he passed away. She said, quote, "Anybody that knows Josh is going to miss that smile. We will never forget him. He's one of a kind." Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I wanted to give a special thank you to a couple channel members, including Shelly Stevenson and Christina Fuzzle. If you also want to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public, and it's currently one of the best ways you can help support the channel and help out. And I really appreciate all of you that have decided to do that. If you want to join, you can click that big join button below the video, or find the link down in the description. There's also now True Crime Stories t-shirts available if you're into that kind of thing, and that link is also down in the description. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and it just keeps you up to date with my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.